Welcome once again to another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. I'm your host Omar, and as always, we talk about leadership in the retail world, specifically in the boutique world, like wireless retail, AV, appliances. We're here to talk about being the best leaders that we can, not just for ourselves, but for our teams, for those that pretty much rely on us to help guide them through success. Because that's what leadership is about. And that's one of the biggest things I want to talk about today. Uh, just because I've seen so many posts that, for lack of a better term or word, are asked backwards, right? You're not a boss. Leadership is not a boss. Leadership is a title, okay? First and foremost, it doesn't have to be a formal title. You can be a leader and seen as a leader from your team, by your peers, by the actions that you do. You're not a boss. Okay. You're a coach. And as a coach, there are certain things that you have to do as a leader. If you've ever played sports, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say you need to be a coach because you've had great coaches and you've had terrible coaches. And you know what terrible coaches do? Because terrible managers who are bosses do that. Whereas your leaders are the ones that you looked up to that help coach you and help develop and train you through a process to become better. Uh, and that is why your teams fail. The other day, I saw a post about, you guys should apply for us. We have a great 2 week training, teach you everything you need to know to get you going so that you can be very successful. No experience needed. It doesn't matter what you do, you need more than 2 fucking weeks to do anything, to be able to learn anything, especially if you don't have any experience. Okay. Typically, a 2 week training means that, hey, we're going to bring you in, we're going to give you a foundation, you're going to take a bunch of these e learnings, and then sink or swim, figure it out. But then you have the churn and burn. You're constantly hiring and firing people. And you go back to, oh, people either don't want to work or I can't find great quality candidates. You're burning through great quality candidates by not developing and training them. You're throwing them into the fire, into the deep end, without teaching them the basics of how to stay afloat and wondering why you can't find and retain people. That is a mindset problem. That is a culture issue at companies, right? You shouldn't be churning and burning through your employees. You should have employees that want longevity and are producing, and because their longevity also means the longevity of the organization. Okay. If you're doing a lot of acquisitions, right? You're buying smaller companies and you're bringing them into the fold. This is very imperative. You're getting talent, yes, but the culture is going to push them away because you, one, have no culture. Two, you're setting people up for failure and you're just churning through people and you have no consistency in your organization. Okay. As a leader, that is very important for you to understand. Training and developing people leads to consistency. It builds a culture, and your people will see that. Now, if you're not coaching your team, you're just managing their decline because you're not getting them better, right? Most DMs, they think about, all right, we just got to hit the quota. This is how we're going to do it. And this is what you got to do, right? Make sure you're not late, hit quota. If you don't hit quota, I'm going to write you up. That's your coaching, is a write up. And that's terrible. That is terrible on so many levels because you're not coaching anybody. If you're in an organization, a sales organization especially, and your form of coaching is a PIP, is a write up, you're not coaching anybody for success. You're just telling them, like, okay, we're just going to fire you. Like, the moment you start with the write up is the moment that you, as a manager, as a so-called leader, have decided this person's not worth training, not worth developing. I'm just gonna fire them. I'm just gonna let them go. You're wasting fucking resources. The time it took to hire that person, right? To find, first off, to find them, to interview them, to go through the hiring process, just to turn around and fire them instead of training and developing, you literally spent more time finding that individual than you did in training and developing them. You literally spent, I guarantee you, upwards of 6 to 8 weeks to find that individual through the whole process, right? Because that's on average what it takes to find individuals. And it took you less than 4 weeks to turn around and say, I'm just going to fire them. You just wasted about 3 months. Like, what the hell are you going to do? There's a better way. Coaching, training, developing is a better way. Like, if you think about it, in sports, if you're a coach, for y'all that played sports, y'all know this. Your coach doesn't just tell you what to do and expects you to just do it on your own. First off, if you've ever been in a team and that's what your coach did, your team just fucking sucked. Y'all know that. That's what it was, okay? But you know that they're on the field, they tell you what's going to happen, they give you an example, right? They showcase it for you. And then they have you run the drill and run the drill and run the drill. And you run until you can't have to, if you, until you don't have to think about it. You know, when you're running that play, boom, you know what you got to do. You don't have to think about it. Okay. And it should be no different for our people. You, as a coach, as a leader, you got to show them what is expected. You can't inspect what you expect without you properly showcasing what you expect out of them. You got to observe what they're doing. If you as a district manager can't be there for your team every single day, right? If you got new hires and you can't be there through the training process, that's where you got to train and develop your local leaders, your assistant managers, your store managers, your shift leads, whatever you guys have. And let them know this is what we expect. And make sure they understand it. Don't tell them. You got to showcase it at the beginning. This is what I've always said. It takes a little bit of time at the beginning to do this. And when you spend a little bit of time at the beginning doing this, it frees up so much more time on the back end as a leader where you don't have to worry about what kind of training these people are going to get. I know what to expect. And when I drop in, I can easily have a conversation with the new hire and I know whether the training is going great or whether we got to just course like, hey, we got to correct this now before it becomes an issue. Because I'm not hiring somebody looking to fire them in case they don't work out. I'm hiring this person because they're going to work out. Because I'm going to do everything in my power as a leader to make sure that they're successful. And you got to set them up for success, right? So that's what you do as a coach. You show, observe, adjust until they get the plays right. You can't just expect, I'm going to throw them in this random ass new hire training for a week or 2 weeks or a few days, right? If you're lucky, you guys have that. I know a lot of companies don't. It's like, okay, you're going to learn on the field. You're going to learn on the sales floor. Cool. Y'all know they don't really learn. That's why you have such a high churn rate when it comes to employees. And you wonder why employees don't stick, or you wonder why it's very difficult to find employees. You got to have a process in place, and it doesn't take a lot to get the process in place. You just got to be consistent with it. Okay. And think about it this way real fast. When is the last time in the last week alone that anybody on your team had an actual coaching session? Did you spend time? Did you download the 15-minute framework and use that with them? Did you have a simple conversation at the very least, right? Did you have any kind of coaching conversation with anybody on your team in the last week? That was not a write-up. Write-ups are not coaching sessions. If you think a write-up is a coaching session, first, let's throw that out. Throw that out with the bathwater. Okay. We don't use that. A coaching session and a write up are two different things. That's where we got to be at. That's what we got to understand. When you understand that, you will see how fast you're going to transform your team's performance. You're going to see how fast they do a 180 and you're like, damn, and I was going to fire that person. Look how good they are. That is how fast it can be. Now, you got to understand 2 weeks of training doesn't build any top performers. It's barely, hardly any type of foundational work. Like, that's not how it happens, especially when it's all just data dumping, especially the first week. It's a bunch of e-learnings, sitting in front of a computer, typically knocking a bunch of stuff out. Gotta get this out, gotta get this out. Because you want them done with that before they even get on the sales floor. Because once on the sales floor, you want them selling. You gotta have their commissions turned on, and you need that done so that they can start selling. I've said this before, you will continuously hear me. I am not a fan of data dumps. 8-hour data dumps do not work. They retain less than 20% of the information. And if you're thinking, Omar, well, that 20% they retain, it's at least going to give them an edge and they're going to be better. Imagine if they retain 70 to 80%. Imagine how much better they will be. Instead of struggling to hit the monthly quota, bam, it's a breeze. It's easy. It's consistent. There's no booms and busts. It's consistent throughout the year. And that is teachable. That is repeatable. That is success. Okay. You gotta be, you gotta be like a coach on the field. You gotta train, whether it's soccer, it's football, baseball, right? I think baseball is boring for most of y'all. I'd rather play it than watch it. That's a different story. Uh, but you gotta coach through and train them so that when game day, when they're faced with a customer or a client comes up, they know the playbook. They know what plays to run. They can adjust the play in the field in real time. Are they going to get it the first time around? No. Practice, practice, practice. But the more practice you get off the field, right? The more practice you get outside of game day, the better you're going to be, the better your team's going to be. Role playing is hands down one of the most important aspects you can do when it comes to coaching your team. And guess what? Role playing doesn't have to be the old way it was before. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, if you haven't, download that 15-minute framework. It's in the link, in the bio, the description, depending on where you're watching this. Use it. That visualization technique that's in that framework, that is as powerful, if not more powerful, than any role playing session you can do with your team because it can be done anywhere. And it's not going to be awkward like a regular role play session is. That's the difference. That is what's going to help you and your team become so much better at what you're doing. And you're getting in coaching sessions, you're getting in practice sessions without it feeling like a coaching practice session. Okay. That's the most important thing. Uh, Now, this one is like a big one for me because every company talks about we got to be a coach, right? We have a great culture. We train our people, develop our people for success. We do so much, yada, yada. If you have to talk about culture and what kind of culture you have, you don't have a culture. The culture is something that just is. It's what we do. It's what we live and breathe. That is culture. It is not a mission statement. It is not what we have written on the board somewhere. It's not, that's not culture. Okay. Coaching will help you build a culture because then your team is able to get things done and able to go forward and actually do things on their own without you constantly having to micromanage and be involved. Now, coaching, it's not a tool, it's a tone setter. It helps create the culture, and the culture is your tone. It shows your team you're invested in their growth and that you don't just care about numbers. I've said this before. When you're doing coaching correctly, when you're training and developing your team, you're growing them not just professionally, but you're helping them grow personally. And you're going to turn around and see how you, as a leader, have also grown, not just professionally, but also personally, because you're getting a better understanding of how people think. You're being more empathetic. I don't care where you stand. If as a leader you don't have empathy, you're not leading. You're trying to be a boss, and that shit doesn't fly. That shit doesn't work. You can't boss people around and expect them to sit around and take it. You're going to be out of a job soon. That's what's going to happen. That is the reality of it. Unless, you're buddy buddies with a higher, exec in the company, you're gone. You're done. You're not going to have a future there. So let's focus on actually being a coach. Let's focus on creating a culture of success and actually backing it up, right? Not just talk the talk, but walk the talk. And what you'll see as you start coaching more and developing and training your people, you're going to get a lot more buy-in from people. It's going to feel like they're a lot more loyal to, it's not going to be the company. It's going to be to you as a leader because you're spending time doing what other people haven't, training them, coaching them, helping them break limiting beliefs that they had about themselves in the past, where before they may not have thought that they were worth much in their eyes. And because you're spending time doing what nobody else in their life or very few people in their life have done, which is be supportive by training and developing them. And being supportive, guys, this isn't, oh, you know, I'm your BFF. And no, as a coach, you lay it out as it is, right? You give kudos when it's deserved. And, when things aren't going smooth, you also give a reality check, but you're not a dick about it. You're not an asshole about it. Okay. You're letting them know, like, hey, we got to adjust course. So, what's going on? What's up? You're taking time to find out what's going on because you never know what is going on that is affecting performance. You can't just think, okay, when you're here at work, shut off everything that happens. That's not how we live. We're not robots. We're people. We're humans. And when you train and develop your people, you build that empathy and you get to know who they are. They understand that you care for them as an individual person. And that goes a long way with a buy-in, with having that almost like loyalty and a higher engagement. They're more involved. They speak up more. They showcase their talents. When you have, executives come around, whether it's from the organization or from, the vendor or the carrier, they're more involved. They're not shy. They're a lot more engaged. And then everybody's going to turn around. Wow, you have a really great culture here. As a leader, they're showcasing what you've done. It's not just the numbers on the paper, but it's also their performance. They're fucking happy. Like how can we do this somewhere else? How can we replicate this elsewhere in the organization? That is how you as a leader will stand out. It's not just the performance. but it's also the impact of having a true culture. And you get there by training and developing your teams. And that's the big thing. Now, you can't expect to have amazing talent, amazing performers on your team if you're not coaching. That's the way it is. Or if you're coaching like an amateur, like I've said before, coaching and write ups are not the same. Don't equate those. Those are two different things. So if you're ready to shift and be truly transformative as a coach, be truly impactful as a leader, check the link, grab that 15, the link in the bio, the link in the description, grab that 15-minute coaching framework. You're going to go a long way with it. It's free to use, it's free to download. It'll be a very impactful first step for you. And if you've tried different methods, it will help you adjust your coaching style. If you have any questions, like I've said before, shoot me a DM, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts. And as always, thank you for stepping into another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. I'm Omar, and I'll catch you on the next one.